How's it going, Andrew?
What is going on, Matt?
Not much. You're getting snow today. I'm not, being a little bit to the west since it's lake effect. So, haha.
Lake Lodge loves lake effects. No, let's just get that straight. And
Right.
yeah, it's not too bad. We had a.
Although I do.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I've already stopped.
Hey, you know how there was all those posts about exploding trees, quote unquote?
Yeah.
I may have actually had one crack partway up. I might be calling a tree removal service.
I saw
the cold weather may have caused some issues for me.
I saw a video that someone showed where the tree was making weird noise, so they set up a camera and it just went pop, and like the basically the bark just blew open. There was just like it ringed itself. Just the bark blew
It
off
looks
the
that
tree.
way. It looks like the bark's blown open about a third of the way up this tree. So I'm gonna put on boots later and trek out into my backyard and try to determine how soon I need to take action.
How big's the tree?
Bigger than I could cut down myself, considering there's a fence right next to it, and if it falls the wrong way, it falls on the person through my backyard's garage. So
Me and my dad have definitely done things before where we take ropes and tension them
this is
to the
like
car and
it's a
cut it.
it's a skinny pine, but I would say it's about 20 or 25 feet tall.
That's a that's a little too much. Unless it was like in the middle of a field, then you'd be like, whatever. But yeah, that's too precise.
Right.
Cool.
Yep, exactly. So,
Well,
all right.
fun.
Well, why don't you hit the music and we'll bring our guest on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right. We are on today with a very special guest. We are joined by the one, the only, the legendary Worshipful Brother Frank McKenna, home based out of Lake Country Freemasons 42. Frank, what's going on?
I'm here
Yep.
and warm.
That's the best two things.
Yeah.
So, Frank, to kick us off, give us the lowdown. What got you into Freemasonry? Give us the background story. How'd you get here?
Happened a long time ago. And I was in a small town in Texas called Bernie, Texas. I worked for I had several jobs. I was a shoe shine boy for a while, and then I worked at a bakery, and then I worked at the newspaper office. And one of my jobs was delivering things that were printed, and one of the things that were printed there, because there was no radio, was funeral notices. So I went around, somebody died, I went around Main Street and all the businesses and delivered notices of death. I was also younger than everybody else in my class, in my school class. I started first grade when I was 5, so everybody else was 6 or 7. So, and the church I was going to sorted kids by age, not by grade. So there was a lot of good guys that I met going around town, businessmen, and I played Little League, and I knew a lot of people. At church there was a guy named Brother Ed Edmondson, and he was a Sunday school teacher that was looked kind of like Abraham Lincoln. Only most of the time he was bent over talking to kids, kind of folded himself down and talked to kids on the level. And I wanted to be in his Sunday school class, and came time for my classmates to go there. I didn't get to go because I was too young. So I stayed back with the little kids. Didn't make me happy. And I was looking forward to getting in his class when the school year started. Again, was when I did that. And I had a funeral notice to deliver, and it was for Brother Ed, and he had passed away. So I delivered a funeral notice, and then I went to his funeral. There were these guys there in white aprons. I knew quite a few of these guys, and one of my school friends, his dad was there. His dad owned the lumber company, local lumber company, and I said, what are those guys? And he said, well, they're Masons. And I said, well, your dad's one. He said, yeah, he's senior warden. And I said, what's that mean? He said, I don't know, but he's senior warden. So, I still don't know what that means, but that's still one of the secrets of Masonry, I guess.
What's a
Uh,
senior warden?
but anyway, there's a lot of difficulties in my childhood, and but these guys were all solid people, and I decided that I wanted to be a Mason, and didn't know what it was, and as I got older, and I found out you had to be 21, and I went to talk to one of them when I was home from college, when I was just before turning 21. I said, how do I join? And he did the Masonic thing, said, here's a petition. And so I basically filed my petition on my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in November. And then I was raised in April. I was going to college and at Texas A&M, and they gave me a piece of paper to take to the lodge in College Station, and I wound up with the head of the English department as my mentor.
Oh, that's cool.
And we sat out in front of when the weather was good, we sat out in a big oak tree in front of the academic building and worked on learning what I needed to know. And it did what I wanted to do, because it gave me a framework. I think a framework of morality. It gave me some principles. I feel very strongly about the inner apprentice charge. I think that if that's the only degree we had, we'd still be an excellent organization.
Mm-hmm.
And and looking at different faiths, and wound up in a variety of religions, because I wound up with whatever whoever I was living with at the time when I was growing up,
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. So I've ranged from Catholic to Baptist to Presbyterian to a full gospel church. Just depend on who I was with. But the duties that are listed in the duties of a Mason to God, your neighbor, and yourself, I think those should be the principle of every religion. And I think there's nothing in that inner apprentice charge that doesn't fit. So I carry around copies of it in my apron case, because I do the charge, but it doesn't appear in our light series, and I think it should. I think the three charges should be printed in those books. So I'm opinionated. So, but going through life, raising, I spent many years. People said I worked half days. I went to work at 7 and left at 7, because computer shut down at 7 o'clock at night for backup, so I had to go home. That's kind of that. So it's always been. Even in the years when I wasn't attending lodge, there was still pieces and parts of what I had learned, under the tree that stuck in my head. So, and then when I got here, I was in Indiana, and I joined the lodge in Indiana and moved back to Texas. And I moved back up here. I got divorced, and my new wife said, what are you paying dues to this place in Indiana for?
The classic
said,
wife question.
And I said, well, I want a Masonic funeral. And she said, well, why? I said, well, because I want a Masonic funeral. Well, isn't there any of that club up here? I said, well, yeah, there is. I just haven't. I've been out of the hospital quite a bit at that time. And so I figured out that there was a lodge in Heartland. It closed just before. It merged with Oconomowoc just before I go find out about it. And I told her, I said, if I go, she said, get out of the house, go find something to do, go meet with these people and do something. I said, well, that if I do, I'm going to get active, and you're never going to see me again.
Yeah.
Good.
As it goes.
So that's kind of where I restarted. But so that's the boring past. But that's and like I say, I joined more lodges than I should, because I like to pay dues. And as long as they let me do ritual work, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. So with all these years How long have you been a Mason? So you said when you were 21, and what, you're
79.
79. How many years is
Yeah.
that? You should have got a card probably.
58, I think. It's coming up on 58. 58 in April.
58 years as a Mason, close to. What kept you in Masonry after you joined? Like, that's something I'm always interested in, is what made you stick around? Like, what did you find in Masonry that made you want to keep coming back?
I needed the principle. I needed what it offered because a lot of other things were out of, were not going well or were confused or whatever you want to call it. Things were rough, and it was something that was consistency. And then the other thing was the welcome that I felt when I visited other lodges, from where I was. So it was always a home. And when I was on the road, I was an auditor for a while, regulatory auditor. And I had a dues card, so I knew the Tyler's Oath, and so I visited a few places, not as many as I should have, but it was always a welcome.
Nice.
And
Yeah, that had to be helpful, moving around and traveling all over the place, to know that you had somewhere you could find people you would get along with.
don't always agree with everybody. I found at least 2 instances where Andrew wasn't right. But I may have been mistaken on one of them.
50%. So with, all your years in the craft, how has Masonry changed from when you were first joining a lodge in Texas to lodges now today up here in Wisconsin and anywhere in between? Have you noticed the craft change in any ways?
Yeah, there's definitely, and I realize I was a Mason in Texas and Indiana, which is both are considered in the South. And period of time that I became inactive was when I left Indiana and moved back, and part of that was the largest part of that was racial, because I bought a house in Indiana based on what I could afford, and my brothers came immediately to me and said, "You can't buy a house there." The term was, nighttime. I think it was something like nighttime comes early. Meaning there were black people moving in the neighborhood, and there were, but it was a reasonable house that I could afford and had nice neighbors. And but so I was unhappy with the attitude that the other attitude that we were exclusive. The old part in the obligation of that is used as an excuse for keeping people of color or people out. So I particularly appreciate the fact that we've come a long ways, and that's much better. So there's always been good, but there's also there was this kernel of protectiveness around it that was, and that didn't make me happy.
No, that's a pretty legitimate reason to not be happy about it.
Yeah,
And I was going to say, I remember one thing in the Indiana Eastern Star. If you wanted to go into the home, your chapter or your lodge had to approve your move to the home. And I was a member of 2 Eastern Star chapters, and one met on a weekend, one because I was traveling still and usually home on Saturday to mow the yard. And the chapter decided not to approve a lady's application to move in the home because her daughter was married to a black man and they had children. And it would be horrible if she had a picture of her grandchild in her room at the Masonic home.
Jeebers.
And that, so, I didn't resign. I didn't, demit or whatever you want to call it, but when I moved back to Texas, I figured I was going the wrong direction to become active again.
Well, it goes to show too, when it's spelled out pretty clearly in our charges, in our obligations, and then throughout. An undercurring theme in a lot of our stuff is we're to treat all people on the level and to view all of mankind as your brethren. And when the hypocrisy sitting there is that blatant in the face of, something you enjoy and a philosophy and a moral framework that you value, and you get to watch an organization at certain times in history and in certain places just disregard the core philosophy, one of the core pieces of our philosophy, stupid reasons, more or less, that can be a hard place to be like, well, why would I want to sit in a place where they're not walking the walk if they're just walking the talk, or they're talking the walk?
Talking the talk, I think, is what you were going
walking
for,
the
Andrew.
talk, baby.
So, Frank, I want to circle back. So you've been a Texas Mason, an Indiana Mason, and a Wisconsin Mason. This is kind of a two-parter. How long have you been in Wisconsin here, and did you serve as officers in either of those other two states when you were doing Masonry there?
I was a Tyler and a steward in the lodge I was raised in once, because when I finally managed to escape from college, graduate with, barely graduate. I got married and had to, kind of move back home, or back to where I to Bernie. I was active for a couple of years and did some traveling in Texas, and then when I get to Indiana, I was never an officer because I was not expecting to be there very long. I was asked to be in line twice, I think, or three times. I was very active with the craft club. The lodge had a twice a year pancake breakfast that was a major production. We served, depending on the year, between 1,500 and 1,800 people for a pancake breakfast. Wow. So I was in charge of the sausage. So I couldn't figure out for a while. I said, I'm driving to lunch. There's still people driving home. It's the middle of the night. Well, I figured they were coming home from the bar, and I was going to go start cooking sausage.
Respect.
So there's a lot of sausage involved for that many people. All you can eat pancakes, and
yeah, Masonry can be a sausage party sometimes.
Yeah.
Such a bad joke.
It's a perfectly timed joke.
Well, it was sausage patties.
Still. So that's a huge event.
But it was very, successful, and I've always had this stamp on my head that somehow said assigned paperwork here.
Yeah, you do.
So it's just like a little thing that says make treasurer or secretary. Push paper. Yeah, that's it. But I think my move in Wisconsin is I think the years before I was enjoying being in lodge. When I began to get there was a Henry Pinecker was a member of Lake Country, and Henry traveled all the time to do degree work, and he had this big arm, that kind of reached over and said, "Hey, you're coming with me. We're going to Lake Geneva tonight." and we'd walk in and they'd say, "Oh, you guys are here. Good, because we don't have anybody to do the conferring or the lectures. So, there's 2 carloads of us, and we know you guys can do it." So, but getting in ritual, and then getting involved in the book club, getting involved with Lafayette, digging into the depth. The guys, the 1,700 versions of our first 3 Grand Masters, those were no small minds, and the ritual they put together, deep and meaningful. And how many? Even though I'm quote proficient, there's times when I hear something in a degree that lights a path to go find something. I've said it 25 times or whatever, but hearing somebody say it, all of a sudden lights a fire that I got to go investigate.
Which explains why you're so active at Silas Shepherd, the Lodge of Research, trying to you get the grain, the little nugget, and you go, ooh, piece of candy. Let's go figure out what's down pull this thread. What would you say from those types of moments? What was the most fascinating thing you've learned in those types of situations that's really stuck with you within your studies of Masonic ritual and Masonry in general?
That's a tough question. I think the concept that what I feel that our ritual communicates to us is that we are to build, that we are the lodge that we build, and whether you want to call it the soul or the spirit or whatever it is that we need to have this lodge within ourselves, and that it needs to open and close. Because when we open a lodge, we basically we tile the walls to seal the brothers within the lodge to meet together with the great architect of the universe, with the spirit in the east. And the lodge is whole. The east provides light, the west reflects the light, the sun shines in the south. Every piece of the lodge has symbology that we can fit within ourselves and open our lodge, and we're there to open our lodge to communicate with deity. That's where we move from secular to reaching a higher plane. And whether you're talking about Kabbalah, raising up the levels of Kabbalah, or whatever type of spiritualism you look at, that's the important part. Now, pancakes are important, and pancake mix is real important, because there'd be a 2-hour discussion in the lodge on pancake mix. But when it comes down to it, the lodge provides us a framework, and fraternity provides us a framework. Ritual provides us a framework, not to be wearing. We've all worn collars, right? So that's not what we're here for. We're here to build something under the collar.
The internal.
And the internal, and that's where it counts. And of all my brothers sitting in lodge, I'm certain that I'm the least perfect of any of them. and because I've had more years to develop I've had more years to make more errors than most people get to do. And so, that's not a goal, but I've done some very stupid things in my life. And but when I can focus on the internal and just have the conversation with the deity, and I realize that there's a very heavy reliance on the Christian religion in Masonry, because basically at the time of the creation of ritual, that was the only thing that would be allowed. But it's universal. I agree with Gandhi. There's no religion that's perfect. There's no religion that's all bad. It's what we interpret, what we want to do. But we got from inside, we've got to build the moral code that we know is the right thing to do. And having somebody tell me what the difference between right and wrong is not the right thing to do. Maybe there are people that need that, but if you're going to be a Freemason, if you're going to be a brother, you've got to have the ability to make that determination on your own.
Your own experience must have established its value. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. What would you say then? I'm fascinated by this. What would your recommendation be to a young Mason who, let's say, just raised, into where to start and how to begin building that internal temple? What do you think the first step should be?
Learning the charges.
You and I are aligned on that, Frank. The charges are super important.
Yeah, what you're supposed to do.
The charges do it. And I find I was trying to write, and hadn't been a good few months. I haven't finished it, but because I kind of ran out of gas. But I think the description that we see in the third section of the Entered Apprentice degree is not about the physical lodge. I think that description is the instructions for building the internal lodge within us. Even I think some people are puzzled by the all lodges ought to be situated due east and west. Remarkable, east wind that saves us, right? But I think the east is the source of light, and the wind from the east is not wind, but the wind is the force of light that illuminates, and the west is our secular world with the outside. So if we don't get that flow from east to west, then we're not maintaining a proper course.
So it's like aligning your priorities east to west to make sure that you're spending the time necessary to address not just your secular and mundane concerns, which are necessary, but that you're still orienting towards light and spirit or deity or looking inward.
And that's the essential inner temple that you build. Now, my architectural plans for my inner temple are kind of a disjoint mess, because it's been, there was no clear and concise plan when I started. So I've built on these little stacks and side rooms along the way. So it's not a real pretty temple.
It's like a Frank Lloyd Wright, right? It's creative architecture.
What is the guy? I can't think of the guy. The guy that from the 30s that did all the drawings of the opposites of the stairs that go around and around. I can't think of the artist's name.
Is that MC?
I'm blank on his name, but one of my.
You're right, Matt. It is MC Escher.
Escher, yeah. And one of my favorites is the book that opens to the library books that open to the village. And I think that's my favorite work by him. The street, it's just because books open up the way to the street. But he'd have trouble describing the way my temple got built.
Well, I think that could be true of all of us. I mean, we all have probably wings that are boarded up and dusty and not in use anymore because we don't visit that part of ourself anymore. We've moved on with it. And the new additions as we create new versions of ourselves as we evolve as a human being throughout our life,
And unfortunately, like snakes, we don't shed our skin,
Right.
Well, and that brings up
some of us insulated.
And Frank, I think it brings up another good point with the how do I build? Masonry tells you to look at your trestle board, whatever that might be. And I think for some people, their trestle board is easier to follow than others. If you're, really well founded in a specific faith, it's very easy just to go, well, I'll just focus there, and that's how I can start to know where to build. Whereas I am also a little bit eclectic with my spirituality as well and how I conceptualize deity. And with that, I feel like it does create a little bit more of, I don't want to say combining traditions that don't need to be combined, but maybe like picking like this makes sense, this goes here, this goes there, which definitely creates a more unique looking temple, I feel like.
Well, I spent a lot of time in the New Testament, and I think I read all of the Barclay's interpretations of the New Testament Gospels and the books. But the shortest book in the Bible is I do pronunciation badly, but Philemon starts with a P, Philemon, and that's probably not how you say it. But it's a short piece. It's like four verses or something like that, 5 verses, and it's a letter from Paul to this guy that's like a bishop of the church, a well-known Christian, where he's sending a slave that escaped from him back to him and telling him that, this guy, remember the name, this guy's now your brother, so accept him. And, that's where brotherhood rubber meets the road. It all comes, all of the other rules and regulations comes down to the fact that he's telling this guy that here's a guy that one of your slaves escaped, and you're both Christians, so take him back and welcome him back as your brother. And he's telling this guy, the slave, to go back where you came from, and have enough faith that he's going to have enough faith to accept you as where you're at. So to me, that's if we could exhibit that spirit in our lodges, and on maybe one or two occasions, I have seen some heavy emotions get involved in lodge discussions and disagreements, and we're human, but that's what we got to work to avoid. That's what building the inner temple does.
Well, and Matt has always said, he goes, that's the nice thing about a brother. He goes, brothers fight sometimes. They go, look at, your family, you'll fight, but you're still brothers. So you got to remember at the end of the day, like, you got to treat them like family, come back around, be like, yeah, my bad. Things get out of hand sometimes, Being brothers doesn't mean you force harmony to the sake of disharmony. It means that you remember to align with the fact that, treat them like they're your brother.
Yeah. Well, probably the biggest example of that is, building discussions in lodges,
Those can get heated, but yeah. I always tell, I've said it more than a few times on the podcast. You don't always have to like your brother, but you always got to love him.
So if the goal of Masonry is to build your inner temple, which I think is a good and useful way to contextualize our allegory in a productive and helpful way to actually make improvements, what do you think lodges need to start doing to help brothers truly live up to becoming Freemasons and living up to our archetype?
I don't know. Turville is, frequently said, every lodge has its culture, and that's true. We go where we feel comfortable. So but the thing that we need to be aware of is if we're going to get somebody to participate, we have to be value oriented. And we got to offer them something of value to make them feel valued at being there. So I particularly think the Ashlar program is an excellent example of onboarding somebody to become active in the lodge. Ashlar program has worked very well for Glen Humphrey. This year, there's two officers that Day of Light Masons from last 3 years that worked through participation in lodge activities, getting assigned things to do, feeling important. My involvement in Indiana started. A neighbor and was a member, invited me to pancake breakfast, and I wound up washing dishes. And you know what? I had fun. And then got in the craft club, and then everything got active. So I think the path is finding, and some people are people come in a wide variety of ranges, from extremely shy to overabundantly communicative.
AKA me.
But you gotta find, a sense of belonging is getting invested in the lodge, and that's the key. Because once you're invested, I think you stay. I think for me, investment, the most important investment I've had is ritual work. And now it's what I enjoy, and I'm going to keep doing it till I get it right or die. So, one of the two. But that is, I think that's the key.
Drove you to dive so deep into the ritual work? Was it like if I commit all this stuff to memory and I'm going over it constantly, I'm gonna learn more from it? Or was it, I'm really good at memorizing things, so I should probably do this?
Well, I think, it gave me, I think I got started with ritual with a trip, with a lodge visit from 42 to Henry L. Palmer. And several of the guys that I went with were participated in an MM degree. And my first participation was Seafaring Man. And that's a pretty short part. But, that was like, oh, okay. Now, difference between Indiana ritual and Wisconsin ritual, there's a seafaring man and there's a wayfaring man. Because the seafaring man went to sea, right? The wayfaring man watched the seafaring man, have the conversation. So obviously, same guy does both parts, but I think that was a start, and then paying attention to the parts is what got the feelers going, got the lamppost lit.
The bug. Got the bug.
Look at me. Look at me. Go down this alley. And I've changed, I've some alleys I've gone down 2 or 3 times and come up with different interpretations. I was right each time, but they were different. But that's the beauty of Masonry. There's no right is what we see.
It's the beauty of symbols. You have to interpret them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And even Andrew's opinion is important. I hate to admit that, but they get a rise out of him.
Like I think one symbol I always keep getting those light post moments from is the chalk, charcoal, and clay. I don't know what it is about that symbol. Every time I re-listen to the explanation, I go, God, there's kind of a lot shoved into this symbol, isn't there? And especially like the chalk, whenever you read a book, something else gets stuck on you. Or anytime you watch a degree, something else gets stuck. And you're like, I got some more chalk on me. and it's always different.
Well, and the clay or Mother Earth is that's, to me, that's a very heavy faith-based statement, because we have the spirit, which is important. The spirit, but our McNulty uses the example that when we're born, the spirit gets in this car, doesn't know how to drive the car, but learns how to drive the car. And then when we die, the spirit leaves the car, abandons the body. And to me, that's what the clay part of that lecture says, that we say the dust returns to the earth, and but everything that I know from my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is a mortician, so I was looking at trying to figure out how come we buried Hiram, but then we have his ashes deposited, and Glenn says we all turn to ashes. Whether we're cremated, that moves it fast, whether we wait for nature to take its course, or whether even if we're embalmed, we're eventually going to be ashes. So, and then what built our bodies came from the earth. And when we're gone, all that's left is the ashes.
Come from the earth
So,
and the heavens too, from the creative solutions of the universe being recombined. From
yeah,
whence we came, we must then return.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a. I wish I had another like 40 years to explore more, because certainly there's a lot to explore.
There is too much for one lifetime, unfortunately, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you can study a lot of different things, and you can have a very, very base knowledge of a lot of different things, but to actually like try to deep dive everything and, become an expert in everything, which might actually lead to understanding of the bigger picture, is something that I don't think anybody gets afforded the time to do.
there's a Prince Hall brother named James Martin, and I think when I was with him in the book club, and I think he was a grand lecturer at Prince Hall, and that man's knowledge was he's just the most knowledgeable Mason I've ever been my privilege to know, and it was just amazing being when he opened his mouth, there was what came out was something worth hearing, and and he's I, he's such an example of somebody that had absorbed so much in his lifetime.
Well, Frank, whether you like it or not, that is also the reputation that you carry around Wisconsin Freemasonry. So you might not realize it, but like when I was a young Master Mason, right, super passionate about reading all these books and all that stuff, people would say, "Oh, you'd really like to meet Frank McKenna. Like, you should go talk to Frank." And I'd be like, "All right, yeah, I'll find him someday." And so you actually hold a similar reputation in Wisconsin for being one of the fountains of knowledge that people look to hear
Well,
what you have to say about stuff. That's why we dragged you here.
well, I know enough to know what I don't know.
Isn't that what knowledge is, though, right? It's the paradox of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's crazy too. I've tried to explain to like I was at the Robert Burns dinner the other day, and this young Mason came up and they're like, "You should talk to Andrew. He's into wook stuff like you, and he likes esoterics. Go talk to Andrew." And I go, "What's going on, man?" And he's like, "So what do you like? What does Masonry give you?" And I said, "I think that one of the biggest things outside that framework is inspiration. You're inspired to search. You're inspired to ask questions, and you're inspired to go down those rabbit holes and seek out answers to those questions. But also, Masonry gives you so many opportunities that there's an unlimited amount of things you can explore in Masonry." And so, yeah, it's impossible, I think, in one lifetime to explore every one of those nooks and crannies and the forgotten wings and, debunked degrees and stuff like that. Like, it's endless, the amount of things you can find to enjoy as a seeker.
Well, I tell you, in the Entered Apprentice, in the third section, the closing line of that third section is, the unfold its beauty to what is it?
Candid Inquirer.
It's diligent and it's not diligent, but
Curious and candid inquirer.
yeah, yeah.
Double speak. It's always got to be double speak. It's there somewhere.
Yeah, it's always got to be two words. But I mean, that it unfolds. Serious exploration. There's an author named Earnshaw that wrote the Light series. It's 4 books, one for each degree. It includes the Royal Arch because he's British. But that is some heavy reading, and that man knows there's a tremendous amount of information there, particularly about the early days of Freemasonry.
How do you spell Earnshaw?
It's ERNSHAW.
Got it. I'll put a link in the show notes as well for our listeners if they're interested in going down the Light series rabbit hole. Let me guess, these books are going to be some of those really expensive books that are no longer in print.
No. He wrote one book, turned it into the publisher, and the publisher said, "Well, this is like 1,200 pages, so I think maybe we ought to split it up. But yeah, it's available. It's like, I don't know, I'd say $25-$30 a book, something like that.
Not bad,
But
not
one,
bad.
but one book will take you 2 months to read.
Well, if it took you 2 months to read, it's going to take me 3 years.
But you'll learn more about English history and politics and building the fraternity and in the midst of that and carefully detailing it to fit. But but it goes on from there. And then I'm not a Royal Arch Mason, but the Royal Arch book was very informative. It was very, very well done.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to start reading. Gonna have to start reading again. Well, that's a good thing. I that sounds fascinating to me. I want to check that out.
Let me know how they are. I'll tackle them after you. I got three different books on the fire at once right now, as it is.
Yeah, you book club guys.
Yeah,
Trapped going through a meeting of Masonry.
Reading that one, that Ash and Alum, the history of the Vikings, and Leopold Berry right now. What is it? The Curious something of Leopold Berry.
I got this book on the Hermetic Mysteries written by a lady in 1850, and that is the heaviest book I've ever seen. She published it, or her father bought up all the books because he didn't want it. He didn't want people reading it because he felt she put too much out there about. I don't really understand the Hermetic. I've heard it referred to, and I know it has to do with some similarities of us, but the only thing I got out of it is that about on the third page it says she mentions all of the effort to list all these scholars that have looked to find the history, and she said it doesn't mean anything. Finding out where we came from doesn't matter. Finding out where we're going is important. So I think I read that to you guys on the Dowson Book Club one night. But I mean, it's like, all these guys with these theories about us, from the Italian stonemasons to the Druids or whatever.
To the Templars, to Adam and Eve. We come from Adam and Eve, right? You're like, what are you guys talking about? Yeah, the hunt that legitimacy is based on old is one of the weirdest fallacies that we live with. It's like, and everybody had to try to claim some sort of old lineage to even have any legitimacy. And then you find out almost all of them are completely fabricated. And they're like, no, it's right around the time that you thought it was. And you're like, okay.
Well, there's some good, I enjoyed, what was the one, the two guys that had all the theories about what was that one? We just finished that book.
Was it Born in Blood?
Is it Born in Blood or the Masonic Key, something like that?
Oh, the Hiram Key.
Hiram Key. That was an amusing book. I mean,
I've heard it described as fan fiction. I've heard it described as fan fiction. I go, yes, that's great. That's why I haven't read that or Born in Blood. I go, just fan fiction. Like, it's not, it could be entertaining, but you're like, is this solid evidence? Like, nah. Like, okay.
In both those books, I feel like they try to jump to conclusions that don't have definitive evidence that you should get there, or they will use the lack of evidence as evidence to draw the conclusion.
Absolutely, yeah. This sounds good.
Right.
So it must be true.
That's the classic thing. Or willfully glossing over opposing details. They'll just not include those. They'll be like, this doesn't make my picture as clear. We're going to push those out. We're going to build the classic ambiguity of like, well, 70% of the Sahara is basically unexplored. So it could be there. There could be an ancient society. And you're like, but is there any evidence of an ancient society? Like, but there could be. And you're like, there could be a lot of things. There could also be, whatever there. And you're like, yeah.
Could be an undiscovered worm,
Yeah, right.
My favorite in the Hiram Key was always when they would be like, well, there's nothing that says we're wrong, so we must be right.
Yeah, that,
Every historian just like pukes in a bag and just like, stop. Yeah. I know. I have, and as somebody who went to school for anthropology, I have a hard time reading those books because they actually make me mad. Like I'm reading, I'm like, I'm pissed off right now. I don't like it. Like it's annoying me.
Yeah. I would suggest staying away from those two then, Andrew.
yeah, that's
I've done so thus far.
Oh. Well, what do you think? Should we start wrapping this up and ask Frank the big final question?
Yeah, let's send it. You ask this time.
So, Frank, every time we have a past master on the show, we like to ask them the same question. Answers have varied quite a bit over the couple of years we've been doing this now. And that is, what would be your one piece of advice for a newly elected or newly installed worshipful master?
don't show up for installation. No, I think as a worshipful master, if half of the people are happy with you and half are unhappy with you, you're doing a good job.
That's fair. It's actually fair.
What if they're all mad at you? I'm just kidding.
Well, then you need to make some people happy. But as long as it's 50-50 or, plus or minus 10%.
Give or take.
Yeah.
You're on the right course.
Cool.
But I think that's, ideally the master is fair. That makes a successful master, whether things come out the way they wanted them to come out or not. But you got to be fair.
Justice.
And we're not only do we we have a Masonic code, which is at times counterproductive and confusing, but we don't really have we don't have a gold standard set of rules. So, and what is best for a lodge located in Dousman and South Dousman is not necessarily right for one located in North Dousman or Poughkeepsie or Door County. I mean, that's you're where you're at, and both is and time is a factor. Not only the place, but it's got to be the time. Is it time to paint the building or sell it? It's a question that's got to be asked, and there's all kind of emotion involved. So, yeah, it's the fairness has got to be the number one thing.
Yeah, it's almost like since the master's given dictatorial powers that are only bound by the bylaws and the code, more or less, it's up to them to have to be a Mason and keep the scales of justice in due balance, and then just have to make the decisions that have to be made, hopefully with a good conscience and good intentions at heart, and then just have to let the cards fall how they're going to fall, feels like.
Well, I know specific examples of, master making a decision that to have Party A join the quote progressive line, and Party B leaving the lodge because they didn't get selected. And after that, Party B is absolutely opposed to the master that made that decision, even if it's counterproductive to, even when it is, in this specific example, even if it's counterproductive to the lodge he's now active in and an officer in. But he holding those grudges are not productive for us. The old thing about pointing the finger. I'm pointing the finger at you, but how many of them are pointing back at me?
Mm-hmm.
It's so it was a decision that was made, and got to make a decision.
Yep, and then you got to just figure out what you do next. You can't just sit your time living in the past. The decision's made, so now it's what do we got to do going forward,
Well, yeah, I made a decision and talked to a brother and told him that that he was not ready to move to the east, and he started over as senior deacon, and he's now past master of that lodge.
Let him cook a little bit.
Well, but he also, I explained to him, what the issues were, and he had been talked to. I was like the third one to have a conversation with him and said, no, I'm not, I'm not going to recommend you I'm not going to nominate you, or you're not going to be nominated, and you're not, and I'm not going to vote for you if somebody else nominates you. You got to learn, you got to go back and look at some things and make some changes. Because and he actually made a pretty good master.
I was going to say, and while that conversation and that situation is uncomfortable to have to deal with, it ends up, if it's received the right way and delivered the right way, it ends up being better for everyone, right?
Yeah.
He's going to have a better year. The lodge is going to have a better year for it. He's going to grow for it. The lodge is going to grow for it. It's just beneficial all around.
Yeah, but that's a tough decision. It's a bit easier to let him go and
weather the storm.
Well, and not all masters turn out good. Not all masters. Some take the position and then run into situations that are unforeseen. Some take the position and develop a bad attitude. I got the honor. That's all I got to do.
Right.
I get the picture in the lodge. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, I got him a picture on them. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, my it's better than to have a picture in the lodge than in the post office. But, haven't been caught yet.
At this point, if they didn't catch you yet, they're never going to catch you.
I don't know.
Frank, we thank you very much for coming on the show today. This was great. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hold you in regards as one of those Masons who is a fountain of knowledge, and I always love our conversations.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me and enjoyed the afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again, Frank, for coming on and joining us. I think there's a lot that our listeners are going to enjoy and unpack, and I look forward to seeing their comments. And my hope is that some of our conversation really gets them that itch, that little light bulb turning on, where they're going to start going down those windy rabbit holes down to figure out how they can address their inner temple. But thank you again. And to our listeners, if you need to reach out to us, please feel free to email us at
timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
Follow us on socials, like, share, etc. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great day.